So typically what we see on the exam is RBAC, or role-based access control, is usually we see that on the exam as RBAC, not the rule-based access control. So the difference between the two is usually the role-based access control, that is, if Captain Obvious doesn't hit us upside the head here, we have roles. That's one of your definitions there, right, Hugh? It's we assign roles, and based on those roles, we can then give access to specific roles within the organization. This is kind of a neat model if you think about it. I want to give you an example here of something that I've had an opportunity to work on in my career. And so this is a role-based access control model, right? And usually what we'll see on the test is that role-based access control will be RBAC. I have not seen it at all yet come back and be rule-based access control for RBAC. But let's just say here we have some different objects, okay? So I'm just going to create some objects here. Just give me a second while I go through and just amuse myself here. So the objects are going to be in here, and we're just going to create a few of them, okay? And then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and do something like this. We'll just try to do a little cylinder, or a circle here. So with our role-based access control model, this is kind of neat the way that this works. And if you've never used this before or seen this before, then it's not a difficult concept for us to try to convey. Rather, it's kind of it makes things a little bit easier. So with role-based access control, we may have a central repository. And what we'll do here is I'll put a central repository in the middle. And so this repository could be like our, what we were talking yesterday, the lightweight directory access protocol. But typically we'll see it as an active directory, okay? And so for Active Directory, inside of Active Directory, we will have all these different objects inside of Active Directory. And these objects are these groups, and the groups essentially will be roles. So for us, we may have an HR role. Let me just make that like that. We may have an IT role, finance. Give me something else that we might have. Physical security. What else? Okay, information assurance. How about training department? Usually we'll see an insurance, like somebody handling corporate benefits, so bennies, I'll say. Hugh, anything else here? QA. Okay, so QA, some people that are testing. So underneath these role-based access control, what we can do is we can then assign privileges to specific applications here, right? So let's just go through and enumerate these a little bit. If I have specific applications that are over here, so we'll just say app 1, and then app 2, app 3, just give me a second here, and then app 4. If these are the 4 main apps within our organization, we can actually come up with these different roles for each individual department. So I can tell you this, that I did this exercise when I was at a business. And let me just give you an example here of one of the things that if we just take a look here at, let's say HR. In HR, what are all the different possible roles that we could have within HR? Not positions, but roles. So for access to the systems, what are all the different roles that we could have in HR? We probably have something like an administrative assistant, right? We probably have somebody that is has access to some personal, so some PII, right? Some personal identifiable information, probably some PHI here. Again, these are different roles within here. We probably have a HR specialist role. And then let's just say a HR user role. And I just stick with me here. These will make sense here in a second. So I'm going to highlight some data elements here just for the time being. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign those data elements over here to, let's say, App 1. So with this role-based access control model, here I have all these different apps that are showing up on the right-hand side, and PII and PHI are two elements that are showing up here. So like, first name, last name, date of birth, social, those types of things. PII, PHI could be anything and everything in the insurance arena. So the different roles that we see in HR could be an administrative assistant, an HR specialist, and an HR user. All right, so if we come down here, and let's say I have an executive assistant down here, and a Benny's specialist and a Benny's user are the different roles that I'll show down in the benefits department here. Well, what does that mean? That means that we have a little bit of crossover here between two different departments. So we have HR roles up top here, and then we got the Benny roles down here, right? So if we have these, what's the difference between an executive assistant and an administrative assistant? Is there? Is there any difference between the two? I'll tell you that on the IT side of the house, the answer is no. Most of the time, they'll still need access to, things like Outlook, things like SharePoint, the Office suite. So what we could do is we could eliminate this particular role down here of executive assistant and just utilize a general role of administrative assistant, and then put that into our repository here as a role for consumption by different departments. So what does that do for us by doing that? Well, it allows us to immediately consolidate different nomenclature within the organization, but then also we could probably do something along the lines, instead of calling these different roles in HR specialist, HR user, we could say something more general and just say personnel specialist and qualify that as, hey, that person's going to have access to some personnel information. So instead of an HR specialist and a Benny specialist here, now we got this personnel specialist that is on in both departments here. That's not how you spell personnel. Oh, okay, it's two N's. Sorry about that. And now we've consolidated two other roles within the organization. So you're probably like, well, Ben, you know what? You're starting to confuse me here. You know what? I don't understand anymore. You're going way too over my head. Well, check it out. If I have two roles here, an administrative assistant, okay, and then the personnel specialist, what I can do here with these two roles is I can actually now go through and assign these two roles specific access to specific apps in my organization. And usually you'll see this implemented in identity, access, credential management, but also another avenue that you'll see, so let me just write that over here for you. So you usually will see this implemented in like group policy, right, GPO, or identity management, as a centralized location that we can keep all the roles active. And essentially, if we go through and assign an administrative assistant in HR, an administrative assistant in benefits access, then what does that entail? Well, an administrative assistant may end up getting access to, over here, you guessed it, App 1. And because of that, now, instead of having to assign individual or specific roles to this system for everybody, now all we got to do is just assign the role-based access control to specific users, and it's governed by our central repository in the middle here. So it's very convenient, makes things less of a hassle, and in a nutshell, that's role-based access control. Any questions?